I think a lot of what's happening right now, especially in Minneapolis, is a continuation of the uprisings in 2020. The reason why Minneapolis was able to respond this way in the, over these two murders is because of the mobilizing and the organizing that happened around George Floyd in 2020. I think the lesson in it is like the continued work that it takes to organize folks has to be a part of like also any queer and trans strategy, whether we're doing specifically LGBTQ specific work, but I also think the LGBTQ organizations should still be present in that work and in those spaces.
Well, hello, family. Welcome to Power Beyond Pride, the table where truth gets served hot. Okay, not lukewarm, not cold, but hot, just like me. All right. Love stays on the menu and everybody has a seat at our table. So on this show, we are going to loosen our shoulders, sip something good, and talk about what's really going on in the streets. I am Mattie, the loudest person in the room at all times, whether I'm just standing still or talking. I am always a vision to be around. Hey. And I am here with my two co-hosts.
Yes, she is. Now, when Mattie says, what's really going on, we mean what's really going on. And we mean in politics, pride, pushback, progress, and all the messiness in between. This is Reply All. No script, no fluff, just truth, love, and a little bit of shade and side eye. And with that, I'm your other co-host, Kenyon Farrow. I'm a writer, activist, media strategist for social justice causes, and very glad to be here.
And I'm glad you're here, Kenyon. I'm Shane. I'm one of our other co-hosts, and I guess I'm the other side eye. And I don't even know, like, you have one side eye and then another side eye. I always wonder if there's two sides to the eye. Anyways, I am a lifelong harm reductionist, owner of a great idea, and a walking mohawk with a penchant for music. So that's me. And I am excited for today, mostly because it's also been an incredibly intense time. It's still going to be an intense time. And when we need to get started, we need to pour some tea, is what I'm saying. So does anybody want ice, or do they want their tea room temp? ICE practices don't just target immigration status, they disproportionately harm people already marginalized by gender, identity, or sexual orientation. This is why immigrant rights are also queer rights, right? So LGBTQ plus immigrants, especially transgender and non-binary people, are at far greater risk of abuse, harassment, and violence in detention centers that other groups often fail to protect LGBTQ people from assault and may place transgender women in male facilities, increasing risk of sexual violence and mental trauma, right? So like one of the big challenges that we've got right now is that, frankly, like all these attacks on our immigrant communities, like we forget that they include queer people, right? And so like all of our trans plus siblings, all of our family members who just are just experiencing layers of assault. It's hard to get through this time where it just feels like it's every day. It's just every day.
No, I definitely agree. I think at this point, like I know I said this to you in private, Shane, but I have to limit what I see, what I hear, what I do, because it does make us angry. And I think for me right now, being an activist and being angry sometimes is hard to manage the two, especially when I get to thinking about ICE and what's going on in Minnesota. Innocent people are just getting killed in the streets for no reason. And I say no reason because to me, I think this is all senseless. I think everything that's going on right now is senseless and crazy. And especially as an LGBT member and a trans woman, sometimes it's scary because and I'm going to make a joke about it, but I'm being dead serious. I said to my cousin one time, every time I change my wigs, people ask me my nationality. So I got to be careful being out and about around people because I don't want them to mistake me for another nationality. And it happens, and I feel like a lot of, especially trans women, feel that way because of the fact that we do change our with different, and not even just trans women, but women in general. You know what I'm saying? People in general who are makeup artists or artistic people who change up their look so much that it's like, that adds another layer of security and safety measurements because what if that day I'm walking around with blonde hair, but my license got black hair? You know what I'm saying? What if I don't look exactly like my license? And then I go into a detention center and I'm misgendered or misclassified or mishoused. And now not am I just receiving punishment from the detention people, because we know that they're not the nicest people, but I'm also having to fight for my own safety and freedom with other immigrants. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I think one of the things right now that's been just so crazy is so we've in the last few weeks has been obviously the focus in Minnesota on Renee Good's murder and then Freddie's murder as well. And those things are obviously really important. But I think one of the things that we've had, and also Keith Porter in LA, right? I don't want to leave him out as another person who was murdered by ICE. But I think we've been focusing a lot on kind of what ICE is doing kind of in neighborhoods and in certain cities that they have specifically targeted. And we kind of lost a little bit of focus on what's happening to the people who actually end up getting captured and disappeared into these ICE facilities in the last few weeks. And so one of these has been happening as we sort of talk about the death toll in terms of ICE, in terms of just the actual kind of homicides that ICE has been committing. I think we're also missing what's happening to folks who are still actually in ICE detention centers or who have been shipped away to a range of different places or countries around the world. And we don't even know the number of deaths. Some have been reported, very few, but we don't know exactly what's happening to people, including queer and trans people, people living with HIV in those facilities, et cetera. And so I think once this is all over, the level of just atrocity that's been committed, I think we're not even prepared to fully comprehend.
No, I love you sharing that because it is important to note, like you said, the high profile murders, those have been mobilizing, and it's really, again, been a moment for people to really see the harm that this administration has been doing on many levels. And I want to get to that in a second. But those that were lost in facilities oftentimes don't get the same level of press. And there have been a number of individuals who either did not receive treatment and were due treatment, and so they had passed away due to from in their 30s and 40s due to coronary or other issues. Again, who knows prompted by what? Again, there's so little record, there's so little transparency into those institutions, and we know of only a handful of those, but there may very well be more. But what I also want to circle back to is something that you're also, I guess I feel like leading into a little bit, Kenyon, which is it's kind of the unintended, I don't know, unintended is maybe the wrong word, but like so there's a lot of people who are seeing themselves at risk of being targeted by ICE, who aren't accessing healthcare, who aren't going to employment, who aren't seeking support in a lot of different ways. And those numbers, the individuals whose either lives are lost or parts of their life deeply affected and impacted by all of this, we don't get a number on that. We will not hear about those individuals who don't get access to treatment if they're living with HIV, for example, who may not get access to medication if they're in transition. A variety of things that are not just impacting our community, but many communities. Because again, you have individuals who are not able to access workspaces for fear of their families, may go hungry for all we know, and may have issues and health conditions related to not being able to access care and treatment or proper food, whatever the case may be. So there is a lot to be done, and part of the attention going on responding to ICE is so critical, but it's also worth asking, what can our community do in some ways to rethink about how we're approaching individuals who are just simply impacted in our communities? We know Minneapolis is certainly getting a lot of attention there, but a lot of our communities are still very much living in fear. A lot of children are staying home from school. A lot of families deeply impacted, and there are ways we can show up. And so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are there, because I feel like queer community members need to see themselves as part of that solution too.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot folks can do. I think that what's been so inspiring about Minneapolis in the midst of the atrocity is the level of which so many people in that city are, have been able to be mobilized to respond. I think so what we see, if you're not in Minneapolis, is like people just at the various kind of like mass demonstrations that are happening. And and not about like that was actually built and developed over time. See, like I think a lot of what's happening right now, especially in Minneapolis, is a continuation of the uprisings in 2020. So the reason why Minneapolis was able to respond this way in the, over these two murders is because of the mobilizing and the organizing that happened around George Floyd in 2020. So it's a lot of the things that I see online where people are saying, why people are showing up now when this has been going on. I think these are the same people. Like I think literally most of these people are the same people that were in the streets in 2020 are now in the streets in 2025 in different cities, particularly Minneapolis. And so I think the lesson in it is like the continued work that it takes to organize folks has to be a part of like also any queer and trans strategy, whether we're doing specifically LGBTQ specific work, but also, which I think that we need to do, but I also think the LGBTQ organizations have to also show up in the spaces, not just when there's a clear kind of LGBT cut. Now, obviously, in Renee Good's murder, she was a queer woman, so that matters. But I don't think even if she wasn't, we should still be present in that work and in those spaces.
I love you saying that because I think that, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I definitely do agree with what you're saying, Kenya. I think too, piggybacking off of that, like you were saying, community itself. I think the best thing we can do is just continue to show up because I agree with you when it comes to Minnesota. I think the tension was already high because of George Floyd, that people continue to ride the wave, but it also shows us how just like those same people showed out for George Floyd, they're showing out for this. It is like we have to stand in solidarity. So it doesn't matter if you're LGBTQ plus or not. We all have to stand in solidarity. I think that's the best way we can defeat this is if we stand in a great number. If we continue to divide ourselves and it'd be like, well, you stand for gay rights, you stand for Black rights, and I'll stand for this, we're never going to get anywhere. So I think the best advice we can give, other than staying vigilant, make sure you know your rights. You do not have to open the doors. Like, I need you to know all your rights because everybody here has rights and rights to due process. So not just knowing that, but also staying informed together. Because I feel like the media is trying to isolate people. It's trying to make us mad. It's trying to make you feel like you're by yourself. It's trying to make you feel like you're so overwhelmed and alone. And in reality, you not. You can call me. I mean, I'm not going to give y'all my number on the show. I do apologize. However, but the people who know me, and if they need to call me, like we have each other. We're not alone in this.
So, Mattie, do you think we need to have a tragedy in order to have this moment? I guess I hear what Kenyon's sharing, and it's really, I think, potent because it says, hey, we did this in 2020. We did this in 2025. One of the critiques that I've seen, and I think it's a salient one, right, is that for communities of color, for communities who have faced continual violence from law enforcement for many, many years, again, prior to Floyd, throughout, centuries in many cases, the reality of this dipping in and out when we are confronted with a tragedy, I think that's a really fundamental point because the question is, well, how do you sustain that in a way that people can understand? Because part of the Floyd protests also coincided with the pandemic and people having a little bit more space. This is coinciding in some ways, not so much that people have space, but more with a specific city. So, we're seeing demonstrations obviously around the country, which is great. But I really think it's important to note like sustained and what does that look like to sustain a movement even past the tragedy. So we don't even have a tragedy in order to fight for the rights and the ability for people to be treated with dignity. Like it shouldn't take this. But I'm being told it is break time. So we are going to step away for a quick break and we'll come back with a deeper dive with some more headlines. So stay tuned, informed, and connected. This is Power Beyond Prime.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Prime. My name is Mattie. I'm sitting here with the amazing Shane and the always phenomenal Kenyon. And before we went to break, we were talking about, do you think that we need a national tragedy or just a tragedy for us to all come together? And to answer that question, Shane, I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, because sadly, that's the only time we do all stand up. Like I always think of national tragedies Like, I think of what I used to teach my nieces and nephews and what was taught to me as a kid with my sister. And it was like, no matter what y'all relationship is at home, when you go out in public, you are a united front. So if somebody picks on your sister, I don't care if y'all just got through arguing, you know what I'm saying? You take care of your sister. So sadly, I look at our community that way. People will live on the same street and not talk to each other, but let one tragedy happen, all of a sudden everybody's having a block party. So if it takes that to bring us together, sadly, yes. But to also flip it, it shouldn't take that. But I think it does. So I would definitely say that, yeah, it takes a national treasure.
Yeah, I don't like it.
No.
I think I'd like to think that but you know, yeah, Kenyon, I'd love to know what you think about that. I know, and then we're gonna move on topics. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've said for years, long before this moment, and a range of questions sometimes from people about what will it take to make Americans kind of like rise up en masse, right? Or not just queer folks, but in general around a range of injustices. And for a long time, I've said when things get desperate, when the dollar falls out and bread is 3,000 US dollars tomorrow, right? And I think that people in this country see things that happen around the world with whether it's just literal genocides or whether it's people starving or the people's economies falling out because of massive inflation, and so then their currency is worth nothing. I think Americans just don't think that that can happen here, right? Uh, and although we are living in a time where we are careening dangerously close to all of the above scenarios, and I think that it is until people kind of reckon with there's very little, I should say, that's separating us from many of the worst things that we see in other countries on television. It's not because Americans are so fucking special, which I think is our problem. We think that we're somehow God chosen and somehow these things can't happen to us. And so people stay relatively complacent and not engaged. But I think that people are beginning to see that these things actually can very easily happen here. And hopefully people will respond before it's too late.
Now, I will say, as I go into the next topic, I agree with you. Kenyon, I think people need to get out of their fictional comfy place. Stop thinking that your life is so comfortable that this doesn't affect you, because it does. One, we're all a paycheck away from being broke. Let's just be honest. Now, some people might have to lose 3, 4, 5 paychecks, but at some point in time, we're all from the same area. We all get up the same way in the morning. We all go to the bathroom the same way, and we all go down at the night at the same time. You know what I'm saying? The same way. So I agree with you. I definitely do.
I go down in a different way, but you know what? I'm just gonna put that out there. And
I know that was coming. I know.
And let us move on for another topic. I'm just saying. I mean, that's a whole conversation unto itself, I guess. Really, when you think about it.
When I said it, I knew that I was like, I messed up and I got to roll with it. I just got to go ahead and say, when we go down tonight, look here. Okay, but no, we got to move on. Look, we can talk about your going down habits later, Shane. But did you know a recent New York Times opinion piece argues that Americans are increasingly turning against the LGBTQ plus community? Sparking a debate about whether this reflects a real shift in public sentiment or something more. The article goes on to discuss that in 2 decades prior to 2020, visibility, recognition, and legal inclusion of gays and lesbians progressed in a lockstep larger and more prominent in such instances as pride parades, landmarks that were lit by rainbows, and federal legislation of same-sex marriage. That progress translates into something remarkable. However, currently now we are seeing that since 2021 to 2024, that the progress has not only stalled, it has reversed in just 4 years into anti-gay bias, which rose to be around 10%. Increases also appeared in biases toward Black people, dark-skinned people, older people, disabled people, and people who are overweight. but not as starkly as the LGBTQ plus communities. So my question to you is, do we feel that we're being discriminated against more here lately than the last 2 decades? I mean, nobody speak at the same. I mean, both of y'all don't speak at the same time, but I would. I mean,
I'm dying to know what Kenyon thinks about this because I certainly have thought.
Yeah. Well, one, I would say there is something happening with the kind of acceptance of LGBT folks in American society. And that is because the right has done a good job in the last few years of really pushing back against various kinds of queer and trans political, cultural, social progress. And so part of what happens is, I think, again, it's kind of back to my other point, is that we take things for granted, that we tend to think that, oh, we get acceptance, and so therefore it stays there forever and ever and amen. It just doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, the right in this country, right, the Republicans and the kind of right-wing factions understand that they can, if they put enough money and enough propaganda in the world, that they can actually start to make people believe the things that they believe, right? And unfortunately, the Democratic Party and the liberals tend to basically take their political cues from however people, whatever sort of surveys or focus groups they get, and they don't actually invest in actually how do you actually move people from one position to the next. They'll say, oh, well, we polled and people don't like this thing, say Medicare for all. So therefore we're not, as opposed to saying we have a vision in this country for a healthcare system that is without private insurance companies and kind of corporate interests in it. Let's convince people that we're right, right? They don't do that. And so we end up in a situation where the Republicans, right, we got to same-sex marriage, we got to all these different cultural touchstones, queer and trans people more visible than ever in the history of this country, but they still stay committed to their vision and have continued to actually push back in ways that is actually showing success, right? And so I think that's the difference that we're in, is that we don't, the same sort of powers that be that are on the left are not invested in actually convincing people that they're right. They actually will just survey people at whatever position that they're in, and then they just won't talk about the things that they think people don't want them to talk about, as opposed to trying to convince people otherwise. And we saw that in 2024 in the elections around trans issues. The Democrats basically had no answer and said nothing, and then here we are.
All right, so I'm going to agree with Kenyon 25%. And the other 75%, because I wholeheartedly believe he's right in terms of the amount of strategic approach to arming an audience with transphobic language, with issues where they felt some level of conflict, and really building and investing in ensuring that it would fester as long as possible until through the elections and even into today. Where I disagree at the 75% of it is that it's somehow, I think it absolves the reality that I think whether or not you identify as queer, whether or not you identify as progressive or conservative, you have yet to reconcile a reality where LGBTQ plus people should be treated with the same level of dignity and have the same right to live as everyone else. There is a desire for acceptance. Like, we oftentimes are looking for that affirmation where we want to be approved, we want to have a space, but we've not done the internal work oftentimes, because we're oftentimes trying to see, we could see this in many of the ways that we co-opt a lot of heteronormative models. We're not interested in asking questions whether they work. We're not interested in asking questions whether these systems are any good. It comes back in some ways, we can look at parallels in racial justice, we can look at parallels in a variety of ways. We're looking for acceptance from a power that honestly we bought into because we live in this system. So again, I don't live in a vacuum. I live in a world that's misogynist and white supremacist and has all of these elements to it. And so it feels familiar. I don't know what it's like to live in a world that has the level of affection and care for self that allows me to live as a queer person unabashedly, without critique, without any question of whether or not I belong here. And so what I think it is that yes, 25% of that 100% is strategic sort of targeting, but that 75% lives among all the people, which is why, getting to your point, Kenyon, the Democratic Party couldn't push back because it itself isn't comfortable with the idea of a world that's trans inclusive. It itself isn't comfortable with all of these conversations. It doesn't know what to do with it. And so it doesn't speak positively about it. I mean, I see this in queer organizations and among queer people who are still, and again, it's human, because you may have grown up in a way that sees the world with a particular foundation, and now you live an identity, an affection, a way of being that is just different from that. And so you're reconciling, like, what is it to manage this difference? What is it to manage this discomfort of something a little bit different than what I'm used to or what people expect? And the courage and the way to live in that, I mean, again, I appreciate everyone who does it. And I think there are so many gay people who do it. But I also know some of these same gay people have a lot of internal conflict about what that means. And so I think there is this sort of desiring to yield at a moment of discomfort sometimes that actually it is. It's sort of like, again, when we think about racial justice, like it is hard not to hear the stereotypes or the norms or the ways that society has given you a track record. And then at times to hear your own brain go, whoa, is that what my first reaction was? Like, that's not a great one. For queer people, I think all people go through it who are trying to question the norm and the systems of the norm. So my feeling is what this number reflects is that, yes, we pushed forward, which is great, and we should. We should have a version of the world that's better. But we never really did a reconciliation of what it meant to manage that different world that we were trying to build, and that people were going to feel uncomfortable. Not necessarily bad, not all discomfort's bad, but they were going to feel uncomfortable. And if they don't know what that feeling comes from or how to manage it, then a Republican Party, a conservative movement can come in and say, oh, I know what that discomfort is. It's this. Rather than saying it's about, this is what a society feels like when we move it forward. And it's going to be different. Because if these systems were good in the first place, we would be trying to change them, essentially. So I think, again, 25% of it, absolutely. 75% of it, to me, I don't think we've changed all that much. I think even queer people have a lot of that internalized homophobia that's still, a transphobia that's all there. It's all still there.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree. I would totally agree with that as well.
I'm so glad
I was hoping for a wrestling match.
But no, and honestly,
I'm sure, but go ahead.
But no, I definitely agree with both of y'all. I don't think it's interesting to me that people say that we got further, because I don't think we ever got further. I don't think we've ever moved the needle in the beginning, to be honest with you. I think, and I'm going to go back to my argument, I think some people got certain freedoms and liberties, and so they made it as a whole that the LGBT community got freedoms and liberties. But let's be honest, the whole LGBTQ plus community didn't. So I don't think as a whole, when they say that from the 2 decades prior to 2020 that there was an increase, honestly, I didn't see it then. I've never seen an increase in supporting of the gay community. I see where we were complimented. I see where we were not so much accepted, but I would say that people got to a place to where they could be around us. They knew how to network with us and be in spaces with us. But I don't think there was ever an acceptance, to be honest. That's just my personal opinion.
To me, that sounds like progress, but it sounds like representation. And I think representation matters. Like, undoubtedly representation matters, but it's not the same thing as systemic change. It's not the same thing as meaningful change, that it doesn't matter if you like me or not, right? I'd love if you like me. I like all of you. I love that you like me, but it shouldn't matter when it comes to a court of law. It shouldn't matter when it comes to my ability to buy a house. It shouldn't matter in my ability to access a job or to raise children, whatever the case may be. But the problem is that we didn't change enough of those laws. We didn't change enough of these things that it doesn't matter what you think of me personally, but that I'm treated like a human at the same level of rights. And we've never, we're still fighting for that for women. We're still fighting for that to fight back racial justice and racial oppression, right? Or fight for racial justice. So queer people I think they made enormous strides in representation. So Mattie, I'd probably push back a little bit and say, I think we did make enormous strides representation-wise. We're telling queer stories. There's more awareness of queer stories. I love that. What I don't think we ever got, we never fought for, and we never at least made happen, was the systemic change to ensure regardless of your feeling and your opinion of me, that I'm treated with the same level of dignity as everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we can always have our differences, but yeah, I don't see where we have gotten but so far, and I do agree with you. You ain't gotta like me, but you gonna damn well respect me. That's how I look at it. Yeah, I don't care if you like me, love me, or hate me, but respect me. I respect you. Respect me. So
I'll respect you in the morning, Mattie.
after you go,
oh no! I respect you now. I respect you now and in the morning, Mattie. And on that note, we need to take a break. Going to take a short break. I'm the one who's I'm bringing us into breaks. That's fine with me. I'm doing that today. I'm bringing us into breaks.
I'm sorry. It's just, yes. Keep going.
Yeah, stay with us because we're having a great time here. A great time talking about very heavy topics, but it's really important we talk about these topics as a community. And so I'm really glad to be in community with y'all talking about it. We'll be back in a minute. We're going to look in the mailbox or mailbag for your questions right after this tiny little break.
Hey, nonprofit leaders, change makers, and community builders. If you're navigating growth, equity concerns, or just trying to make your work better, you need to know about Orange Cap Consultation, a boutique consulting firm led by me, Melody KG. Orange Cap offers community-rooted consulting to help mission-driven teams move with clarity, equity, and have a real impact. Whether it's strategic planning, meeting facilitation, leadership development, or helping you design community programs, I've got the experience and the heart to help you build what's next. Learn more at www.orangecapconsultation.com.
Hey, this is Sean Aaron, he, him, his, and I'm here to tell you about Them Boys Podcast. I'm the host of Them Boys Podcast, and as a Black queer trans man, the podcast amplifies the voices of other trans men of color as we share our transition stories. The podcast not only amplifies the voices of trans men of color, but it raises awareness and conversations around our lived experiences. You can listen to the podcast by going to themboys.org/podcast. That's DEMBOIS.org/podcast. I hope to have you join us on the next episode.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride. I am Kenyon, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Shane and Mattie, and we are queer change makers ourselves. But it's time to check what's in the box of questions.
She's laughing about your box.
No, I'm laughing because I want to say something. Wait a minute, I'm laughing.
What's in the box? I was
we there's certain words we just can't use today. I guess is that what it is? Is that what it is?
No, it had
I'm
nothing to
going
do
down. I'm going to go down to the box. We are all mourning the loss of Renee Good. I know they mention her wife as it relates to the funds raised and the government talking bad about her, but I don't really hear her referred to often as a lesbian. Is that a good thing? It's an interesting question because we talked a little bit about Renee Good earlier. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because we do hear about her wife. I have heard a number of responses around her wife. But I'm curious how you all feel like her identity is being played out or how it's being carried through in the media. And is it good? Which is what the listener's asking.
Yeah. It's complicated, I think, because on the one hand, I do think it's important that people are, in this case, Renee Good is fully visible in who she was as a person, and the fact that she was just dropped off her kids, right, with her wife waiting, right, in the midst of this. So because that's part of the story, I think it is important, and I think in general it is important for queer people who are involved in this moment in ways that aren't about like an LGBT issue per se, are visible as human beings that are concerned about the future of this country, that are concerned about their neighbors, whether they're queer, trans, or not. So it doesn't matter in that sense. But then there's a sense in which this is about state violence, right? And I've seen the question from some people online as to whether or not the specific vitriol against her was because the ICE murderer knew she was a lesbian or had figured that. So if that was a part of the nastiness, because he called her a bitch after the fact, if I'm not mistaken. So there's something in that I think is worth looking at. So I do think that it is important, I think, for those reasons that that her identity is a part of the story. But the larger story is about state violence and militarism more than it is about any of our kind of sexual orientation or gender identity per se.
I definitely agree with Kenyon. I would say to me, it's a catch-22 because I agree. I think at some points, yes, it's important because if it was anybody else, we would list all their accomplishments, especially if it was a white man. The whole thing, like as soon as he got killed, it would be he's a grandfather, he's a serviceman, he is a lover of all things in his community, he's a pastor, a deacon. So I think in that sense, yes, but then at the same time, I think that it doesn't play a part because at the end of the day, this was a human being. I don't care if she was a woman, a man, black, white, gay, straight, or not. She's human and she wasn't doing nothing wrong. So I think on that side, I don't think it really weighs in as much because I think it's just a part of who she is. Kenyon was saying she's a mother, she's a wife, she's all these other things. But I can see where both arguments would actually work in this situation. So.
Yeah, context matters, right? It really matters in which way we're having this conversation because it is important to know LGBTQ people face violence, that it could have instigated, that her simple identity may have played a role in the level of vitriol. Again, when we look at Alex Britti and his murder, it's interesting. Again, Mattie, to your point, would it be different if a white guy was killed? Well, sadly, tragically, we know because not too long after with Alex Britti. So I think it's a really interesting thing because we do want to avoid erasure from the conversation. I do think it matters.
Can I say something real quick though?
Of their whole life. Yeah, of course.
Shane, and to just comment off of what you said, it does matter because it's interesting how when I saw the news coverage of, and I cannot remember his name to save my life, y'all know I'm horrible with names, but
Freddie.
Freddie. Yes. The main thing they talked about was he was a veteran and a nurse. And I thought that was interesting because when they referred to Renee, it was all about how she was a bad person. She was stopping this. She was trying this. So it's like, regardless of who she was, y'all were never going to give her a credible story. Either way you go, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I will say, I think there were a lot of favorable accounts of Renee. Again, it depends on the administration. I think we're just going to trash everything that the administration said about either of these individuals because all of that is false and it has been notably false. I think Renee Good was painted as someone and understandably someone who was volunteering, who was not an activist in the sense of necessarily organizing in the same way as much as we know, but more somebody who was volunteering, who was supportive in her community, who was a community participant. I do think it's interesting that the way they do refer to Pretty, again, the veteran component. Certainly nursing has come up a great deal in this sort of national conversation around sympathy. I do think that's really important. But coming back to Renee and again, Kenyon, I'd love to hear your thought on this, because when it comes to Renee, I don't necessarily want the erasure, but I think again about the person, I cannot remember his name, in 9/11 who was responsible for bringing the plane down essentially in what that was intended to be at a place to take out and hurt far more people. And so risked his life I believe he was a veteran, and he risked his life in order to, and sacrificed his life to save a lot of other people in that practice. And he was a gay man. And it's interesting when that happened, again, the way that was and wasn't talked about as a part of the conversation, because I think we don't know. I don't know. So for the listener's question, I don't think we always know when it is appropriate to bring up, but I also think we fear erasure, but we also don't want to be tokenizing or providing ammunition. That's probably the wrong metaphor to use here. Providing resource for people to cause more harm either.
Yeah. And I think we don't want to also center ourselves in a story that, because that also can sometimes be the problem with like kind of ally politics, where a person or an identity becomes kind of centered in a way that isn't actually really what's happening. But I think in the case of both Good and Pretty, I think we actually saw both things happen with both of them. That with her, it was, I mean, and depending on where the message was coming from, right? So from the administration and its flunkies, it was, she was a terrorist, right? A domestic terrorist. That they literally said that. With Pretty, they said, they've been saying, well, why would he come to a protest with a gun, right? I mean, that they've tried to disparage both of them in ways, and then it has taken community to either their direct loved ones or other people who knew them, work with them to actually kind of restore their humanity and tell a fuller story. I do think, and I don't know this to be true, and I don't want to say too much, but I do think that it's interesting that in Pretty's case, there has been no romantic partner
discussion.
Lover come forward. That it's been very interesting that has not actually surfaced at all. In his case, right? It's been mostly his parents, and then people, in some cases, patients of his or other nurses, people who knew him through his work as a nurse at the VA. And so that to me, the silence around that part of his life, I find interesting, right? And again, I don't have any knowledge or data about anything related to his personal life.
But then, Kenyon, is the question then, I guess that's the question, is if he did, let's say he had a same-sex partner, would we be comfortable with their lack of disclosure at a time of grief? Would that be, because again, I will say Renee Good's wife made a very powerful and incredible public statements, has recognized the need both to grieve and to address the real harm done to community and many people in the city through the murder of her wife. So again, you could tell that she has recognized what that is. But if Pretty did have a same-sex partner, is irrelevant. So that's kind of what the person's even asking is, what if they did? Would we be disappointed? Like that, you're like, hey, why didn't somebody say something? When at the end of the day, to your point, that's not the center of the conversation. It's a component of their life. They're not necessarily diminishing it because it's not so around homophobic or transphobic language that any of this is happening. It's not like they're hiding it or causing harm in some other way. They just may simply not, as a significant other, not want to acknowledge this public space where they have now opened themselves up for critique, again, which we've seen with Rachel Good, right? Which we've seen with Renee Good's wife.
And I think this brings us to the kind of last question in the bag that we wanted to talk about tonight. And what are some ways, and this question, let me say, comes from Allison. So hey, Allison, what are some ways that we as the LGBTQ plus community can stay vigilant and safe against ICE? So what do you guys think?
I will definitely echo back what we said earlier. Make sure you know your rights. Make sure if you don't, you can easily get a copy of your Constitution. You can get a copy of your Bill of Rights. You can get a copy of anything that you need to have on you at all times so that you know what you can and cannot do. And to stay vigilant, I think also too, this might sound crazy to some people, but don't go out alone. Let's try to stay in some numbers. Because the thing about it is too, you need to, if it happens, we need to know, if that makes sense. If something does happen. So I say stay vigilant and stay in your numbers of people. Pay attention, keep your head on a swivel, know your rights, and just know also too, it might be dark right now, but our strength comes because we know it's going to get better. You have to stay focused on hope for the future because I think that's also what gives us strength to stay vigilant in these times.
I love that statement. I say echo the vigilance. Absolutely. What I'll say is you're not safe. I think it's really important to note that it doesn't matter where you are, who you're with. A lot of the fundamental principles being used by ICE, and again, there's a lot of likening it to Gestapo, World War II assaults, but it's much more like the slave handlers, the people who would go and find escaped slaves. It's a lot more. I want to make that reference a little bit more than the Gestapo, because I think it's important to note that this has happened in America, in this America, in the past. This is not new, and that we're not safe. As long as this exists, as long as this federal government has decided to make a very bold assault, not just on physical bodies in varying places, but upon the laws and the protections that you have as an individual and as a citizen, you're not safe in your home. You're not safe. Again, a lot of the places that we have, quote unquote, made safe, schools, churches, many of these spaces that we would consider sanctuary spaces, they have undone. And there's no demonstration that this is going to slow. And so I don't want to pretend there's a safety here, because I don't necessarily want people to be fraught all the time, but there's a reason to be fraught. Like, it is not okay. This is not a time where it is safe, and they're making it unsafe. And if you want it to be safe, then you will recognize that if you experience any level of comfort in this environment, you have a level of privilege that you need to spend some time with and figure out how you can impact the system to actually make it safe for people to exist and thrive on their terms, in their bodies, in their way. And that is something that you can do. But is there a way that the queer community can make it be both vigilant and safe? No. I mean, you just can't. I think you can negotiate places in which you have protections. You can take precautions in appropriate ways. But I don't think this is a time where we need to affirm that there is any day of safety. And I want to also echo and make sure that we acknowledge that this is not new for many community members in the United States. So that this is also not a new concept. It just may be a new concept for several people who just may not have experienced that oppression directly. So.
Yeah, just a quick close to say that, I totally agree. I don't think that we can stay safe per se. There's certainly no guarantee of that. But the only things I would offer is have somebody's phone number in your head, that if you need to access and make a phone call at a certain point, that you don't have your phone with you, that you can do in an emergency. Second piece is, if you have a smartphone, some people often will share their location with, sometimes people do it with their partner or whatever. I always think it's too much. I'm like, anybody know where I'm at at all.
We know where to find you, Kenyon.
I like that shit. But right now I'm actually reconsidering that, because somebody should know if I'm actually, so think about one of your homies who you don't mind sharing your location, and they know and see if you dipped off at the bathhouse or you hear it or wherever. You don't care. And that they have your location in case anything happens. And then you have to, and also if you have either the name of a lawyer, or at least a legal organization, to also have that number in your head memorized in case you also need to use it. I mean, those are just some things that I would say, like, right now, to just prepare yourself so that the lag time between anything happening to you and people knowing and being able to respond is not great, right? That's, to me, one of the best weapons that we have is the speed. And it's why in ICE and these different situations, they keep changing tactics, because as people figure out, and so people are like figuring out all these ways, in Minneapolis, Chicago, and other places, to alert people that ICE is present, that this is how they're tactically moving. They're showing up here, there, and wherever, which is about, like, getting rid of the element of surprise, right? And to reduce the amount of time between them acting and then people being able to respond. So those are just some things that I would do, or that I'm doing now, just to mitigate the safety. But I don't think we are safe at all in this moment.
And news just came out about how ICE people are feeling shame about their job. So I just want to drill that point home too, and say, like, they should. So I think we just want to, in case any of you are listening here, you should feel bad. You should feel very bad. We're not about shame here, unless you are.
Well, now also too, I think it's also to be noted that since all this has happened, the head of border control has been released of his duties. And Kristi Noem right now is the article I read today in the USA newspaper. I am horrible with names right now. Y'all got to please excuse me tonight, okay? Because this is why I do not have nobody's number saved in my head, because I cannot remember nothing tonight. But they were saying that basically Kristi Noem is getting closer to being impeached and sitting down from her position as well. So those are great things. And as we go into our closing, I do want to echo one thing from Kenyon. I know it's easy in times of AI and smartphones to not know numbers, but like Kenyon said, please know a number, because if something does happen, you need to know someone you can call, because they are not going to give you your phone. They are not going to give you time to look up nobody's. Please know at least one person's number. And on that note, also,
and if they're going to follow me, if they're going to follow me, then just know that the rest area, my car didn't break down. I'm there for a little bit longer than. So.
Shane, you know what? Here's the thing with you tonight. I don't know. Did you have your Wheaties today?
I'm just saying, in case you're worried that I was stuck there.
And that's why I share your location with people that you don't mind knowing your tea. But
hello.
Yeah.
But look at y'all.
All of it.
We are so grateful for all the wonderful questions that y'all send in. These were some great questions. And please continue to send in questions. Get your friends to send in questions. Because first off, there's no wrong question, no crazy question. And I promise you, as you can see tonight with Shane's brain cells and his conversation, ain't nothing off limits on the show. So with that being said, thank you. If you have any questions, you can always send them to our mailbag at powerbeyondpride.com or visit us at our website, powerbeyondpride.com itself, and you can submit your questions. Okay.
Or even better, you can send us a video on any of our social channels. We want to see you, hear you, be in community with you, dance with you, all kinds of things.
Yeah, all kinds of things. And that's all we have time for in this Reply All episode. Thank you all for joining us. I'm your co-host, Kenyon, and you can follow me on all the socials just at my name, at Kenyon Farrow. And I'm so thankful to be here with Mattie and Shane as well.
Yeah. Well, I am thankful and grateful to always share space with you, Kenyon and Shane, and all of our hosts. I am also one of your co-hosts, Mattie Bynum, and you can follow me at MattieSimone737 on Instagram, Mattie Bynum on Facebook. And remember, people, please subscribe and get your friends and families to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you receive your podcasts. And make sure you check out our website again, because I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to drill this home. powerbeyondpride.com. Okay?
And I want to join the big gratitude pile up and say thank you both so much. I just and I said pile up, so there we go. And because I appreciate y'all. It's such a great opportunity to be hanging out with you, to join all of you who are listening. Mattie, Kenyon, you're amazing. I'm Shane Lukas. You can follow me on socials at shanelukas.com and agreatidea.com. Also, you can download free posters at end-ice.com. if you want to get some posters and some materials about your stance to challenge ICE. Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at agreatidea.com.
This episode is produced by Shane Lukas, who you just heard, and you also heard Mattie Bynum, who is not just a co-host, but our project developer. Our editor is Jared Redding with support from Ian Wilson.
And also, Ian, I got to give you a shout out tonight. Ian was on it with keeping our time because we so kept going over. So, Ian, I definitely want to give you a big round of applause because you are always on it. We are just a small part of this podcast team here. We are awesome people, amazing people. And remember to send in your questions. Okay, y'all, how many times am I going to repeat my same question over and over again? Please send in your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com. I'm lonely. Please talk to me, D, but that's what I'm saying.
Send Mattie questions. Send Mattie your questions. We want Mattie to have your questions. And you can check out episodes of Power Beyond Pride each week. We look forward to queer change making with you and you and you next time and every time. Thank you from all of us at Power Beyond.
Community organizers, are you ready to unlock new levels of impact? A Great Idea is offering a fantastic collection of free downloadable tools, helpful white papers, and so much more. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency empowering change since 2015, we're dedicated to providing you with the resources you need to grow, empower, and activate your communities. Discover insightful knowledge and practical tools to enhance your work. Explore A Great Idea's free resources today at agreatidea.com/insights. That's agreatidea.com/insights. Your mission is vital. Let A Great Idea help you magnify its impact. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency serving nonprofits, healthcare, and education nationwide since 2015, we're dedicated to growing, empowering, and activating your advocates. Our award-winning work speaks for itself. We deliver transformative change. Ready to see your impact grow? Book a session and let's get started at agreatidea.com. That's agreatidea.com.
Pride.